Hello, welcome to This Side of the Ceiling. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Jill. And we're two good friends trying to live this life on this side of the ceiling as abundantly as Christ has called us to.
We are by no means experts, but we love to study His Word and share everything that He has revealed and taught us.
So come along with us as we open up the scriptures and dive into His wonderful Word.
Here we are again. Welcome to This Side of the Ceiling. So today we are going to start in 2 Peter. We're again talking about Peter, one of Jesus's disciples, and we have so many words from Peter. He talked a lot when he was with Jesus. We hear a lot of what he had to say, questions he had, and thoughts that he had. And then he also follows Jesus's message that tells him to feed the sheep.
Yeah, we get so much of his life. It's really nice to watch him grow, and because especially as I get older too, you think you're always learning and
right. Yeah, and so he wrote 1st and 2nd Peter, and so that's where we're going to start today. We're going to start with 2 Peter 1 verse 16 and go through verse 18. We did not follow cleverly invented stories when we told you about the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses of His majesty. For He received honor and glory from God the Father when the voice came to Him from the majestic glory, saying, "This is my Son, whom I love. With Him I am well pleased." We ourselves heard this voice that came from heaven when we were with Him on the sacred mountain.
What's he talking about?
Yes. So what's Peter talking about? When did he hear this voice on the sacred mountain?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we remember God's voice when Jesus is baptized. But this is another time when the audible voice of God speaks out, and Peter is one of the few that hear it.
Yes.
And he remembers it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to that time. That's what we want to talk about tonight, is that event that Peter refers back to on the sacred mountain. And it's in several of the Gospels, but I would like to look at Matthew. And just to get a little bit of background, I want to back up even. We see Jesus teaching His disciples in Matthew at the end of chapter 16, where we're talking about the Transfiguration. That's the mountain. But before we get to that mountain, just about 4 verses before that, Jesus is talking to His disciples, and in verse 24 He says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Or what can a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with His angels in the glory of His Father, and He will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in His kingdom." Now, I want to read that verse because to me that verse has always been confusing. Like, what does He mean that some of them are going to see the Son of Man coming in His kingdom? Well, I don't think we have to go very far because I've ran across a quote that I really like that says, "The glory that was concealed in Jesus and would be fully revealed in His second coming becomes temporarily evident on this mountain." So where Peter is fixing to see something pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. So in chapter 17 says 6 days have passed. And Jesus takes with Him Peter and James and John, the brothers, and leads them up to a high mountain by themselves. So, Jesus kind of had His little few closer ones, and He takes them up to the mountain. And it says, He was transfigured before them, and His face shone like the sun, and His clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with Him. And Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it's good we're here. If you wish, I'll make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to Him." When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Rise and have no fear." And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus. Okay, so this is just strange. This is very unusual. And, I think Peter, James, and John have no idea what they're in for, and all of a sudden Jesus physically changes in front of them, and his face is glowing, and
producing the light.
That's right. And he sees Moses and Elijah. Now, how does he know it's Moses and Elijah? We don't know. But why Moses and Elijah? There's some interesting thought about this. Moses represents the law because he had received the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, and Elijah was a prophet, so he kind of represents the law and the prophets,
which Jesus came to fulfill.
That's right. So Jesus came to fulfill the law and the prophets. But I think it's also interesting to think about Moses and Elijah because both of them kind of had very unusual, spectacular deaths.
Yes.
Especially Elijah, because he didn't even really die.
Right. He was just taken up into heaven. And then Moses went to the mountain and died, and says God buried him. No one knows where his grave is.
Yeah, so Moses goes up on the mountain and doesn't come down, and they go looking for him, and no one can find him. And so we know that because it's written down that God buried him. So they have these unusual deaths, and but I think it's really sweet, especially to think about Moses, because I don't know. I heard someone say that one time that Moses had 2 things on his bucket list. Moses got to do a lot of things. You think about his life. He got to, hold his rod out and have the Red Sea part.
Right.
He was the one in front of Pharaoh with all those plagues. I mean, he saw a burning bush. He lived in the palace. I mean, Moses had a really interesting life. He
floated in a basket.
Yeah. I doubt he remembered that, but yes. But Moses asked God a couple of things. When he's up on Mount Sinai, he says, Lord, I just want to see your face. And remember, God says,
you can't see my face.
You can't see my face and live, but I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock, and I'll walk by, and you can see the backside of me. Mm-hmm. So he asked God, and it also says that God talked to Moses like a friend, face to, like a friend would. I think it does say face to face, but I'm sure he wasn't his actual face because we said he can't see his face. That also, remember, Moses' face would glow when he would come down from the mountain or out from the tent of meeting. But the other verse, the other thing on Moses' bucket list, I actually want to read because I think it's kind of Moses is at the end of his life, and he's reading. He's telling the Israelites that he can't go in the land. He wants to go in the land really bad. And so he says, I'm going to read Deuteronomy 3:23. And this is Moses talking. He says, and I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? Please let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, the good hill country in Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me because of you and would not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, enough of this. Do not speak to me of this matter again. So Moses had asked God, please let me go over to the land, And God says no. He lets him go look, and then he buries him. But this kind of reminds me of sometimes when your children ask for something as a parent that that little 6-year-old does not really need, But you can get him something better. What's coming. That we can get him something better. We may not can get the pony or the elephant that they want, but we've got a cute little puppy that's coming at Christmas or for their birthday. And so that you've got something that they're going to enjoy that puppy a lot more than the elephant or the monkey that they want,
Yeah.
And so here, it's like God says, I'm going to say no to you, but I have something better around the corner. Mm-hmm. And who knows, God is outside of time. So it could be that Elijah zooms off in his chariot, God buries Moses, and then the next thing they know, they're right on this mountain of Transfiguration, and there is
with
Moses.
Jesus.
Standing on the promised land.
Yeah.
Looking face to face at the Son of God, feet firmly planted in the middle of Jerusalem, the holy city. So God gives Moses exactly what he wants. And it even tells us what they're talking about. Did you catch that at the Transfiguration? It says that they're talking about Jesus's departure. Yeah. So, they had spectacular departures, and Jesus is also about to. And so it's like God's giving him a pep talk, the locker room talk of the great ones who have gone before. So I think that's very exciting. But Peter's who we're talking about. So what is Peter doing when you see all of this?
Well, it says that Jesus was talking with Moses and Elijah, and it says, Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. So he puts them on the same plane.
Right.
First of all, when he had just confessed that Jesus is the Son of God, which would be better than Moses and Elijah.
Right.
But he does that, and it also says that he didn't really know what he was saying.
Yeah.
So he didn't know what to say, but it says... while he was still speaking, so while Peter was still speaking...
Which is no surprise, right?
Yes.
That God has to interrupt Peter.
Yes, just like Jesus had done before. But he says, while he was still speaking, a bright cloud enveloped them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. And in 2 Peter, Peter did quote that. It says in 2 Peter, this is my son whom I love, with him I'm well pleased. Of course, Peter didn't add in 2 Peter, listen to him.
Yeah. but he heard it.
But yeah, he did hear it. And then he heard, when the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. And so they got it, that this is something more spectacular than you can even imagine. This is my son. And so I think that was going to be the lesson that Peter's going to learn. But I also think that he was instructed by Jesus right after that, don't tell anyone what you have seen. And so I think, he had lots of questions and lots of what in the world is going on. And then he's told not to say anything. So I don't know about you, if you've ever been in a situation where lots is going on and then you're told, please don't say anything. And so what happens in that moment is you meditate on it. You think about it and meditate on what just happened, on what's going on. And I think that's what Jesus wanted Peter to do. Just think about this. Don't talk about it, because Peter tends to talk too much.
Yeah.
And Jesus just wants him to learn and listen and think.
Yeah.
Sit in his thoughts.
Right. And I think another thing that Peter learns from this encounter is that, just a few verses right before that, 6 days earlier maybe, something like that, is when Jesus says, I'm going to have to die, and on the 3rd day I'll be raised. And Peter says, God forbid that. That will never happen to you. Mm-hmm. And that's when Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. So Peter wanted no part of the cross.
Right.
But here, when Jesus is being glorified and Moses and Elijah, Peter's all about that. Let's build some tabernacles. Let's let everybody stay here for a while. So I think that Jesus is wanting Peter to realize that he's going to have to suffer. This is not about his glory.
Right.
And I think we get another peek into that. Because remember, Jesus had just told the disciples, if you want to come after me, you have to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. Mm-hmm. So Peter follows him up to the mountain, and he sees that glory. But then look what else happened as they come down off the mountain. Where are the other disciples? Well, they have had a little problem. Mm-hmm. The leaders, Peter, James, and John, are gone, and the rest of the disciples are dealing with a mess. So they come down off the mountain. In verse 14, it says, when they came to the crowd, there was a man that came up to Jesus and kneeling before him said, Lord, have mercy on my son. He's an epileptic, and he suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, and they couldn't heal him. And Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was healed instantly. Then the disciples came to Jesus,